Could we be seeing an uptick in layoffs in college athletic staffing?
Yeah, this comes as Kansas universities, that includes Wichita State and University of Kansas, report staffing cuts. Keenan Penn here with more on what we've learned today. Keenan?
Mike and Rachel, it's been reported that in the last week, Wichita State has gotten rid of 5 of its athletic staff positions in an attempt to, quote, structure and right-size its operations. This all in the same week that KU and K-State have been seeking government assistance for funding for their athletic programs. Now, this comes as universities attempt to keep up with the new landscape of paying players. This under the House versus NCAA settlement that passed last year. Now, schools are making many attempts to reorganize their financials. I spoke to Tim Fitzgerald with Go PowerCat, who says it's an issue that athletic programs all across the country are facing in an attempt to stay successful in the pay-to-play era of college sports.
And it is because of NIL. It is because of the pressure of the rev share. It is these outside forces that have suddenly heaped all this financial need on athletic departments while recognizing that athletes should be paid.
I also reached out to Senator Kenny Titus with the state legislature about the request for government assistance. He gave Toad News a statement saying, in part, the current state of college athletics is leading to some very difficult decisions for colleges in Kansas and across the country. He went on to say that as we, the legislator in Kansas in general, need to ask some really difficult questions about whether that means the purpose of our state-funded universities.